Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most alarming developments in European security. Reports that Kaliningrad's electronic warfare systems may have interfered with the flight of Spain's defense minister's jet. This event has put the entire European Union on edge, raising questions about NATO's readiness, the stability of Europe's skies, and what this means for the future of electronic warfare. Buckle up, because this story is far more complex and dangerous than it might seem at first glance. Kaliningrad, as many of you know, is one of Russia's most militarized regions, a heavily fortified exclave sitting between Poland and Lithuania on the Baltic Sea. For years, analysts have called it the unsinkable aircraft carrier of Russia in Europe, and for good reason. Its air defense systems, missile capabilities, and advanced radar installations make it one of the most strategically significant areas in Europe. But it's not just missiles and radars. Kaliningrad is also home to some of Russia's most sophisticated electronic warfare systems, capable of jamming GPS, scrambling communications, and even blinding NATO radars in times of crisis. The recent reports suggest that Spain's defense minister, Margarita Robles, was flying to a high-level meeting when her plane experienced severe navigational issues over the Baltic region. Sources close to the investigation have hinted that these disruptions may not have been random. Instead, they may have been the result of active Russian electronic warfare interference. While officials have not publicly confirmed this, the pattern of GPS jamming and signal loss in the area matches incidents reported by both commercial and military pilots over the past few months. This incident has triggered a wave of concern among European leaders. If a NATO member state's defense minister cannot safely travel through European airspace without interference, it raises fundamental questions about sovereignty and security. The skies over Europe are supposed to be among the safest in the world, but electronic warfare changes the game. It doesn't require missiles, it doesn't leave visible damage, but it can cause chaos, delay decision making, and even risk lives if aircraft lose their navigation systems entirely. Electronic warfare is sometimes called the invisible battlefield, and for good reason. Unlike traditional weapons, its effects are often temporary but highly disruptive. A single jammer in Kaliningrad could affect hundreds of kilometers of airspace, blocking civilian GPS signals, interfering with military communications, and leaving pilots and air traffic controllers scrambling for backup procedures. This is why NATO has been increasingly worried about Russia's EW capabilities. They're hard to detect until they're already affecting you, and they can be switched on and off in an instant, making attribution politically tricky. The timing of this alleged interference is particularly important. Europe is already under pressure due to ongoing tensions with Russia, sanctions, and the war in Ukraine. Any sign that Russia is expanding its tactics into direct disruption of NATO officials' travel could escalate the confrontation significantly. Spain, as a NATO member, will now likely push for stronger collective measures. The European Union, too, has to consider whether this was simply a test by Moscow to see how Europe would respond. Some analysts argue that this might not be an isolated incident, but part of a wider Russian strategy to normalize electronic harassment. Over the past year, there have been numerous reports of GPS blackouts in the Nordic and Baltic regions. Commercial airliners have reported losing GPS signals while approaching airports in Finland, Estonia, and Latvia. In some cases, these disruptions were so severe that planes had to switch to alternative landing systems. Each of these events, taken individually, might seem like a technical glitch, but together they paint a worrying picture of deliberate interference. For NATO, this incident will likely become a case study. One of NATO's core missions is to ensure freedom of movement for its leaders and forces. If Russia can jam navigation systems at will, it could delay NATO reinforcements during a crisis. Imagine if this had been a situation where troops or equipment needed to be moved quickly into the Baltic states. Even short delays could be critical. Kaliningrad's role in this is central. It is often described as the most heavily defended region in Europe, bristling with S-400 air defense systems, Iskander ballistic missiles, and powerful radar networks. Adding electronic warfare to this arsenal creates what military planners call an A2/AD bubble, anti-access/area denial. This means that in a conflict, NATO forces would find it very difficult to enter the region without taking significant losses. The electronic dimension of this bubble means that even before a shot is fired, NATO could find its communications disrupted, its drones blinded, and its navigation systems compromised. Spain's response so far has been measured, but behind closed doors, there are likely urgent discussions happening with NATO allies. This isn't just about one flight. It's about whether NATO can guarantee the safety of its leaders and forces in peacetime. If Russia is willing to interfere with the defense minister's plane now, what happens in a real crisis? Will NATO escalate its own electronic warfare posture, or will it try to open diplomatic channels to avoid further incidents? The European Union is also paying attention because this isn't just a military issue. Civil aviation authorities have to ensure that commercial flights remain safe. If GPS jamming becomes more common, airlines may need to adopt new procedures, train pilots to handle signal loss, and potentially reroute flights to avoid certain areas. This could mean longer travel times, higher costs, and more tension between Europe and Russia. It's important to understand that electronic warfare isn't new. The United States, NATO, and Russia have all used it for decades. But what's new is its increasing use in gray zone operations, those actions that are just below the threshold of war. By using EW in peacetime, Russia can send a message without firing a single missile. It can show NATO that it has the ability to disrupt at will, reminding everyone that the Baltic region is contested space. The message from Moscow might be simple: we can reach you anywhere. Whether that message is meant as a deterrent or as a provocation is up for debate. Some experts say this is Russia's way of signaling strength, trying to remind NATO not to underestimate Kaliningrad's defenses. Others believe it is a way of testing NATO's red lines, seeing how far Russia can go without triggering a major response. In the coming weeks, we can expect to see NATO conduct more electronic warfare exercises, not just in the Baltic, but across Europe. Already, countries like Finland and Norway have been investing heavily in electronic warfare resilience, including backup navigation systems like ELORAN that don't rely on satellites. Spain, after this incident, may also accelerate its efforts to protect government flights from interference, potentially adding more hardened navigation systems and counter-jamming equipment. The public might not always hear about these changes because much of electronic warfare is classified. But behind the scenes, this is a wake-up call. If a defense minister can experience interference today, what about civilian leaders tomorrow? What about ordinary passengers? The risk is no longer theoretical. For Russia, electronic warfare is a force multiplier. It allows them to shape the battlefield before the first shot is fired. It creates confusion, delays response times, and forces adversaries to second-guess their information. In a world where speed of decision-making is critical, even a few minutes of confusion can make a huge difference. This incident will also likely influence European politics. Security has once again become a top priority, and governments are under pressure to show their citizens they can keep them safe. Expect debates in the European Parliament, expect calls for more sanctions, and expect a renewed push for European defense integration. This might even accelerate discussions about building a more autonomous European defense capability, separate from but complementary to NATO. Ultimately, what happened over the Baltic is a reminder that modern warfare is not just about tanks and planes. It's about control of the electromagnetic spectrum, about who can see what, who can talk to whom, and who can navigate where. In this new era, battles may begin silently, with invisible waves disrupting our technology before we even realize we're under attack. So, what's next? NATO will investigate, Spain will demand answers, and Russia will likely deny involvement. The truth may take months to uncover, and even then, it may remain shrouded in secrecy due to intelligence concerns. But one thing is clear, Europe's security environment just got more dangerous. This story isn't just about one plane and one minister. It's about the future of conflict, about the unseen battles happening right now over our heads. The EU is on edge because it knows that electronic warfare is only going to grow in importance. The question now is whether Europe and NATO can adapt quickly enough to stay ahead. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think about this escalating electronic warfare game. Do you believe Russia is deliberately testing NATO's resolve, or is this just another chapter in the long history of military cat and mouse games? Either way, the stakes are rising and the world is watching closely.